Hello, my name is Kay Stroll. My pronouns are they, them, and you can learn more about me at my website, www.kstroll.com. But I thank you for being here on Absolutely Not. Real quick, if you appreciate the work that I do here or elsewhere, please visit the Support the Mission page of my website. There are several options to choose from to support my work, so please choose one. The keywords for this episode are accountability, harm, and susceptibility. Yes, yes. I encourage y'all to look up the definitions of these words and compare them to the definitions you carry with you on a daily basis. If you need help comparing, please let me know. This episode is sponsored by Headspace. Headspace has one mission: to improve the health and happiness and mindfulness through meditation, sleep, stress, and mindfulness. Find out more about Headspace in the link in the show notes. Today's episode is titled Accountability as DEI Practitioners. I'm excited to talk about this with our amazing special guest, Janice Gassam Asare, she, her. Dr. Janice is the founder of BWG Business Solutions, an award-winning DEI consultancy designed to help organizations create cultures built on racial equity. She's a senior contributing writer for Forbes, having authored over 350 articles. She identifies as Black. Thank you, Dr. Janice, for being here.
Thank you so much, Kay, for having me. I love this space that you've created here. I feel like I remember when you started, or when I feel like I remember when you started, or when I started seeing this on LinkedIn. So I'm so honored to be joining you.
And I appreciate you not only supporting this space by the words that you just shared with me, but actually supporting via monies. This person has sent money and also shares the knowledge with her own network. So I really appreciate that, Dr. Gassam. We're talking about accountability today in the DEI space. How badly do you think people are going to be hurt by this episode?
I think we're going to be talking about a lot of things that people haven't really grappled with, right? Because it's a tough sort of thing to start to unravel. I think it's much easier to point the finger at others, but this is a really exciting conversation for me because I'm also trying to hold myself accountable in my life.
I love that. So many. And I know you just talked about the pointing fingers, but I will say I've seen a lot of DEI practitioners who refuse to do that last part you just talked about. It's like, okay, how much am I drinking? How much am I sipping of the Kool-Aid that I'm trying to get other people to put the cup down of? Have you seen some people sipping recently?
Have I? Yo, it's wild. I think it's wild on these, particularly on these LinkedIn streets. It's frustrating for me, just for my own well-being. I have a boundary where I usually don't do back and forth with people on social media. I know a lot of people, especially when it comes to Black folks, like to troll. And I feel like people do it to get a reaction. I find that sometimes people tag me in things that, without recognizing how traumatic this could actually be for me to see this, right? People will slide in my DMs and be like, have you seen this? And I'm like, so I really try to be intentional about setting boundaries. But sometimes, especially on LinkedIn, I see things that it's like I feel like I have to react, right? Because I'm like, do people really think this way? And what's really frustrating is a lot of these folks that I've been seeing as of late are in the equity space. So the assumption is like, you should know better, right? And you're guiding people to sort of unpack their own biases and create better systems when you haven't really like taken a look at how your own biases that you haven't reckoned with are impacting the way that you show up in the world. And so I think that more of us need to really analyze how we react to things, right? And so I think that it's disappointing, especially for me, when I see it in the equity space. And what I find Kay, that is so interesting is the sort of resistance, right? I think that for us, for any of us doing any sort of like anti-oppression work, you would think that when someone calls us out, we would be able to sort of like recognize how we've caused harm. But I find that sometimes we're the most resistant. Those of us who do this work are the most resistant when people bring things to our attention. And so I find a lot of that on LinkedIn, and I try not to engage sometimes because for me, it's just not, it takes too much mental energy for me to just like be defending things a lot. But I feel like sometimes people do things just to get a reaction and they know that there's currency in outrage.
Let me get that last one. There is currency and outrage. Y'all see it. What's that one place? The Shade Room or play like people prey on outrage. People prey on your reactions. People prey on your emotions, and our inability to kind of say like, I don't owe you that. Like I don't owe anybody that is where we find ourselves exhausted. I love that you talked about the responsibility though that you feel that you have to react because everybody else is like, oh, that's fine. You can keep on with that behavior.
Yeah.
When do you decide that, I guess? That's hard for me to decide like, okay, I will react to this. When do you decide?
That's such a great question. Often, I feel like when I feel the person saying something, and when I feel like it's not them trolling, they truly believe what they're saying, I feel a need or rather a responsibility to step in and say, this ain't it, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm sure you've seen, I know that I saw on your profile, you were moving away from LinkedIn, but I still see you on LinkedIn. So maybe you saw this, right? But a few weeks ago, there was a South Asian woman who posted that DEI focuses too much on Black people. And that really frustrated me when I saw that. And I was just like, I'm not going to react. But then someone tagged me in an article I wrote specifically about that topic or that assertion. And then I felt sort of compelled to react. And what ended up happening is I wrote a long response. LinkedIn has a limit to how much you can actually write. And I have a tendency to go on and on and on. And I just was like, I'm like over here writing paragraphs. And eventually the person ended up deleting her post. But what I was happy to see was other South Asian people sort of checking her and saying, this is not right. And what was so frustrating, Kay, is she's an equity consultant. And I just was like, is this what you like? It seemed like she truly believed that because that was not the first time I saw her post something like that, right? And I've been tagged in her things before, and I try to ignore things, but when somebody's consistently putting out a narrative, I felt the need to like respond. But I know that especially on social media, when you start tagging people, they see it as an attack. So sometimes, I've had situations where I've tagged people and my post is taken down. So I don't tag anymore. I try to let people figure out like who I'm talking about. And most times people do. But I think I feel like it's something that the person actually believes and it's highly problematic. I've had people tag me in things on LinkedIn and I know that they're doing it to get a reaction out of me. So I don't even respond, right? I remove the tag and I don't engage. And I find that for me, again, like the times I have the most sort of cloudiness is when I'm doing a back and forth with somebody, right? And then I'm like, I'm sitting here for 2 hours trying to make someone understand something and they're trolling me the whole time, right? And so I'm just like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. But this was somebody who genuinely seems like she believes that diversity, the focus of, she said diversity specifically should not focus on Black people, right? And that it was just problematic in so many levels. So I just was like, no, I got to respond to this. So I think it's tough sometimes. Sometimes I've responded and I realized I shouldn't have engaged. I don't know if you've ever felt like that, where somebody says something and it's like, I know that I saw you posted a comment from your YouTube channel, right? Where somebody wrote trolls. YouTube is full of to me, some of the worst trolls are on YouTube, and people will write the most horrific, like I've had people say to me the most disgusting things. And I guess that's like helped me to not be faced by a lot of things that people will say about me. But I feel like sometimes you just feel like you gotta respond. It's like sometimes I'm gonna respond, right? Because I'm not gonna let you say that. So I think that sometimes it's like, does this person genuinely believe this? And then I feel a responsibility as somebody who's trying to make the world better or make workplaces better to engage with them.
Especially because on LinkedIn, people take that as truth. Like it's supposed to be a professional space where, okay, this is knowledge that I'm taking on. And so you acknowledging that like this could be knowledge that other people are going to take as truth and like education, I feel a duty to step in. I love that you use the word cloudiness. I love that. We talk a lot about emotional intelligence here, and cloudiness is a emotion that I have not heard before, but I love it. I'm finna use it for the rest of my life. Are there any other emotions that you feel that lead you to either engage or not engage?
Kay, I think anger sometimes, and I think people run from anger as an emotion, and people feel like folks from marginalized communities should not be angry. Sometimes I hear people saying, channel that anger into being productive. And I think anger is a valid emotion, and it's okay to feel angry, and it's normal to feel angry about things. And I think it's okay to sit with that emotion and not run from it, right? When I see things on LinkedIn, sometimes they make me angry. And so I feel like it's okay for me to sit in that emotion rather than trying to run from it and say, oh, I'm fine. I see something and it's fine and it's okay. And it's like, no, it's okay to see something that's ridiculous or see something that's happening in the world and be angry about it. And I think that that's completely okay and a normal human emotion that sometimes we run away from. For me, when I get angry about something that I see, oftentimes it inspires my writing. And I'm like, for me, I feel like I convey myself so much better when I write. I don't always say the right things, but when I write, I feel like I'm a much more effective communicator. And so my anger helps me with my writing. A lot of times when I write things, I'm writing it from a state of anger. And I think that that's okay. And I think if more people sort of sat with that emotion rather than trying to run from it, I just think it's okay to sort of sit with it. I think many of us from marginalized communities are expected to forgive those who cause us harm. And I think that it's okay for us to be angry with that, right? And I know that a lot of people may disagree with me, but I think it's okay to say, you have repeatedly caused me as a member of this particular community harm, and I'm angry about that. And it's okay for me to be angry about that, right? Rather than being like, let me turn the other cheek. No, like, this is wrong. This is not okay. And so I think anger for me comes up a lot, and I've learned to recognize that. When I was younger, I think I ran from those types of emotions because I felt like I shouldn't feel angry and I should sort of feel happy all the time, right? Like that toxic positivity. But now I'm sort of like okay with sitting in certain emotions. If I'm not feeling like I'm like in a happy mood, it's okay for me to be like, yeah, no, I'm not feeling that, right? And I think that helps with boundary setting. I'm really, really trying to learn to set better boundaries because I found that I'm like a recovering people pleaser. And what that does for me is I'll agree to things, I'll agree to go places. And as an extrovert, after or since the pandemic, I'm very exhausted with being around people constantly. And I would agree to do things And then I would get angry when now I don't want to do it, but I've already agreed to it. And I don't want this person to be angry with me. But now I'm like, I'd rather you be angry with me than me be angry with myself. So it's okay for me to sort of like acknowledge that I'm feeling these emotions, because that helps me to set better boundaries.
I love this so much. You don't use anger as an anchor, and also it enables you to acknowledge what is going on around you. I love that sentiment of, I would rather you be angry with me than me be angry with myself. It is taking the emotion for what it is and deciding for yourself where it's going to go. Like you can have it, because I'm not holding this for however long we're going to be in relationship for. You can have it. I love that you said that. Often people say, instead of being angry, be productive, but you are, in spite of them saying that, actually being productive and writing. We 300 over 300 articles for Forbes, baby. And I've heard that you're writing a book as well.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to share. So I'm writing a book which deals with the topic we're focused on today, accountability, right? So the book is called Decentering Whiteness in the Workplace. And I was inspired to write the book because I feel like a lot of times when we really ask ourselves, why are we not creating workplaces and workspaces where people feel, I know that one of your words is safe and safety, right? Is a lot of what your work focuses on is safety. Why are we not creating spaces where people feel safe? And I think that we're still not focusing on a huge part of the issue, which is that people from racially marginalized groups aren't treated fairly. I think we're running from that. And what I've seen in the work that I do is sometimes, especially right after the murder of George Floyd, I would hear people saying, oh, we spent all this time focusing on Black employees. Like, can we go back to like focusing on everyone else now, right? Like as if focusing on Black people not being harmed is a trend of some sort. And it's like, okay, the sale is over, let's go back to the regular price. Or, okay, the show's over, let's go back to the regularly scheduled programming. And it's like almost what's really frustrating also is I see that for a lot of people, they see DEI as like a zero-sum game, where if we're focusing on one community and what they're going through, it's somehow taking away focus from another community without understanding that all of our oppressions are interconnected. And so what I really wanted to do with the book is focus on the fact that in every single system in this world, whiteness is centered, right? And so even the assertion that DEI focuses too much on Black people sort of erases the fact that every single Black person in every marginalized group is treated, experiences the most severe forms of marginalization. When you look at the LGBTQIA plus community, Black trans folks experience the most severe forms of harm, right? When you look at the Black disabled community, Black people, when you look at, the disabled community, Black folks experience the most harm. When you look at Muslims, right, and the Muslim community, Black Muslims experience the most severe forms of harm. So like that assertion of like, oh, we're focusing too much on Black people is like, it's just so infuriating to me, because it's like, do you not understand how the ways that all of our oppressions are interconnected? So I really wanted a book to just focus on the ways that whiteness is centered as within our systems and structures, and then providing ways to sort of decenter whiteness in our systems and structures. And so that's really what I wanted to focus on, because I felt like I've written books in the past, but I don't think I felt comfortable, Kay, really stating what I felt the problem was. I felt like if I said whiteness is the issue, I don't know, I just felt like it was too bold. It was too like out there. So I kind of was like, okay, let's talk about DEI more generally. And I felt like my first book was very general. Then the second book was like racial equity. And now I feel comfortable enough to be like, no, whiteness is centered, and you don't need white people to center whiteness, right? Even within our spaces, we still center whiteness. Even as Black people, we center whiteness. And I really wanted to create something or put something out into the world so people could understand that a little bit better.
This is going to hurt a lot of people, like a lot of people. I've watched several of your videos on YouTube, and you have several essays on like respectability politics and like centering white, like all of it. And I'm so glad you're able, or you have put it into a book now, because a lot of us are still living by that binary of white, good, black, bad. And even that post from that East Asian woman about like how centering blackness is too much is living in that binary. Like, girl, you can definitely center your community in the work that you do. The fuck does that have to do with our community? Like, I'm not understanding. I'm not. You are living in the binary, white, good, black, bad. Do what you need to do, but stop living in that binary. I love that you're naming it as harmful, and the spectrums that exist like all through everything you talked about, like Black Muslim people, Black gay people, Black queer. We exist in all of those spaces and need to be acknowledged for that. Thank you so much for breaking this down for the people. I truly hope that they have icy hot around them, like if they need it, and like I hope this didn't burn too bad for them. But I would love to hear about some of the boundaries that you've had to set around, I guess, other DEI practitioners that want to collaborate with you. Because, okay, no, go ahead.
I love that question. I am always open to collaborating with other, especially Black DEI practitioners, because I feel like I'm not, like, one thing I've learned is like, I'm not trying to be in a scarcity sort of mindset. Every single workplace in the world needs to be focusing on creating more equitable spaces. I cannot do this work alone. None of us can do this work alone. So like, I know when I started my consultancy in 2018, I didn't know any Black people that were doing this work. And even in my community, in my circle of friends, most of my friends were working in corporate spaces. So I was like, I don't know what I should be charging. I don't know this. I don't know that. I had to sort of Google. And when I would Google, I would just find like white experts in the space that were doing this. And so I really love to collaborate with, especially like people from underrepresented racial groups, but more specifically Black folks doing this work, because I know what a toll it can take on us. And I love listening to people about like what they do to sort of care for themselves while doing this work that's very emotional and very like, we're so close to the work, right? And it's like this work impacts our lives, and we're also trying to help others and bring others with us. And so I think that for me, I love collaboration. I think community care is so important. We're not going to change the world as individuals. It's truly coming together. I think I'm being within our communities, and I learn so much from other people. And I think that like this competition mindset that some people have is, to me, a tool of supremacy culture. Is like me thinking I'm in competition with you, me being not wanting to share my resources or my this. If someone asks me for anything, right? Someone asked me recently, how did you get a LinkedIn learning course? I said, let me introduce you to the people what is that? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I meet people and they're like, oh, kind of like, because I suffered, you have to go through that same process. And I don't understand where that comes from. I think it's kind of like competition sort of thing, but I don't think no one's in competition with each other. I think I want more of us doing this work. So when folks come to me and they're like, hey, I need help, I try to help as much as I can. But it's also important to set boundaries where I wish I could mentor 100 people, right, at a time. But for me, I just can't. So I try to put out as many free resources as I can. And I need to do a better job with YouTube. But I was thinking of like a YouTube series where I'm like, this is how I got into DEI, right? I have a few videos where I've talked about that, because people ask, like, what do you do? How do you? So I think doing podcasts, doing things that are free, putting free things out into the world, even like, I really love the LinkedIn newsletter because there's no paywall. What is so frustrating for me is years ago, before the pandemic, it was free to read Forbes articles, right? And a lot of these New York Times, all of these, now there's paywalls. Now you have to kind of like pay for information. Information should be free. There shouldn't be paywalls on all of these things. And so I think making things more accessible to people, making information more accessible is so important. It's not enough to just be like, sometimes, Kay, I hear people say, read a book. And for me, I would say it takes me a while, a second to process things. I'm not a fast learner. And I could read a book. I remember I was trying to read an Angela Davis book, and I just was not understanding it. It's not enough to say, read a book. What does, I need help and guidance on how to process what I'm reading. And so I think making things more accessible to people is so important, and trying to help people as much as possible is what I think is so important. I don't know if everyone has that sort of mindset, because we live in an individualistic and capitalist place where it's all about competing and making money and doing all of these things. But I think if that's what you're chasing, it's like a moving target. Once you make one, 100,000, then it's like, now I got to make 1 million. Once you make 1 million, then it's like, now I got to make 10 million. It's like you're chasing something that's elusive, that you'll never actually have. So I think that it's important to really like ask yourself why you're doing the things that you're doing, and try to interrogate that. Because for me, I had to really look at like, why am I chasing these things? And a lot of times it was rooted in whiteness, right? It was rooted in me trying to be white, me wanting acceptance, me wanting to feel valued after being in white spaces and not feeling valued. And so I felt like I had to get these things. Even honestly, Kay, my desire to get a PhD was because I felt like it'll move me closer to whiteness, right? And make me more knowledgeable, because as a Black woman, I always felt like my knowledge was questioned and second guessed. And so I think for me, I've had to really, when I ask myself about accountability, interrogating why I do the things that I do and why I want the things that I want. And a lot of it was rooted in, this sort of capitalism / supremacy culture, like mindset.
I cannot thank you enough, Dr. Janice, for just sharing this here. I talked about this in the 100th episode, but I'm transitioning away from LinkedIn, as you mentioned earlier. And so I'm trying to figure out should people pay for my content? Should people, but that just solidified the feelings that I've had so much. Like, our voices cannot be put behind a paywall for the most of it, because they're already not out there. Like, they're already not out there to begin with. So me putting it behind a paywall, how are my people going to find me? Like, how are they going to be able to do that? One thing I love about your Forbes article is that it has the play button at the top, so you can listen to, you talked about like, I can't even get into this book, like, but short form content like that, that's also available to be listened to. Like, quick plug right here, but I started writing on Medium, y'all, and it also has a play button at the top. And so that's just what we need to think about when we're doing the work that we're doing, like every step of the way. That accountability, y'all, is like, why am I doing this? Who is going to be able to reach me? Is it the people that I initially intended to reach? Because if it's just reaching the white people, then what happened? Where's the plot of the movie? Like, what happened to the original plot in the movie? So thank you so much for just solidifying that for me here, because that's something I've been thinking about a lot. You have shared so much here. Are there any, hold on, let me backtrack. The accountability that we talked about here in this space is crucial to the work that they're doing. And I hope anybody who has DEI advocate or DEI whatever takes this seriously, or take it out your headline, babes. Like, just take it out if you're not actually doing the work we talked about today. For the people who are like, no, I'm going to keep it in there and I'm going to move forward accordingly because of what I've heard today, what would be the top 3 tips you would share with them about moving forward accordingly?
I would say, as a practitioner, the accountability piece for yourself is important. I don't think you can interrogate workplaces without also doing that inner sort of work. And I had a conversation with someone yesterday, white man, and we were talking about, he asked me, how can I be more cognizant of microaggressions and my biases? How do I know, sometimes people say, can I get a list of microaggressions? And it's like the list is ever expanding. It's infinite, right? And something that wasn't necessarily something that was offensive today, we might learn new information next week and figure out that that's not the right. So it's like, I think, how are you holding yourself accountable? How are you constantly learning about communities and groups and topics that you don't have a lot of knowledge about, right? I think that, like, just because you have a PhD in queer studies doesn't mean you understand anti-Blackness, right? Just because you're part of one marginalized group doesn't mean you're also not anti-Black or you're not upholding systems of oppression. So I think people sometimes try to weaponize their marginalized identities and say, oh, I can't be this because I'm part of all of these, I have all of these intersecting marginalized identities. So I think interrogating what you're doing to actually expand your knowledge and understanding about communities and groups outside of your own. And then I think also part of that is like recognizing the ways that you hold, I hate that word privilege, but recognizing the ways that you have access to things that other people don't have, right? And I always try to tell people, right, and Kina and I talk about this a lot, where people will ask me to speak for Juneteenth events, and I generally don't like to, because I'm like, I'm not a descendant of enslaved people. I don't think I should be making money speaking on an experience I had to read about from a book. So if you want someone to lead this discussion, you need to hire people who have lived experience and not just somebody who read about it in a book like me. So I think accountability is like so huge. I would also say, like, your community, like thinking about who your community is and how you can lean more into your community, because your community holds you accountable, right? If I say something that's wild, I could never come up on LinkedIn and say something crazy, some crazy shit like DEI focuses too much on Black people. Like, the community members, the folks in my community would be like, Janice, what are you doing? Right. And so I think that, like, having community members that will also like hold you accountable is important. Who are you leaning on for support? Who are you, in community with? How can you sort of extend and meet other people? And I think LinkedIn is a great, place for that. That's where I've met a lot of people. And also just like, joining people's Patreons, joining people's communities and building community in that way. But I also think, and Kina and I talked about this too, one thing, Kay, that I notice about a lot of equity practitioners is sometimes when business starts going well, we start making money, we are unintentionally removed from the issues that we are advocating for. So I think about, like, how am I fighting for justice within the community that I live in, right? What are groups that I can join so that I can help people in my community, right? And so I know Kina does a lot of voter, she's very civically engaged. She does a lot of like voter registration and activities in her local community, right? And so I think that looking within your local community, how are you living the work that you do with organizations, and what is making you close to certain issues? Because one thing I see with a lot of celebrities is, like, I love Beyonce, but Beyonce can't speak for the average Black woman because Beyonce is a millionaire or billionaire, and she's so far removed from the issues that the average Black person experiences, right? And that doesn't mean she's not a great entertainer, but I don't want her to be my spokesperson because she's not close to the issue, right? And so what are you doing to make yourself close to the issues that you're advocating for is something that I would ask, because a lot of folks in the space are making a lot of money, making 6 and 7 figures. And I think that they don't really see sometimes how that's removing them from the closeness. What makes us able to do our jobs effectively is not just like the book knowledge or, the experiences you've had, but your closeness to certain issues. I feel like you're going to fight for, equal rights, or you're going to fight against anti-Blackness because you've lived and experienced anti-Blackness. You're going to fight for the trans community because you've personally experienced transphobia, or you're going to, so I think that the closeness is what helps people understand and be able to really advocate for something. And I think that sometimes as equity practitioners, we're so far removed from a lot of the issues we're advocating and fighting for, and we don't even realize it. So I think it's important to look within your local community and think about ways that you can help or lend your knowledge and expertise to your local community.
I love that so much. We live in a social media like RAM world. Not only is outrage currency, but like social currency is a real thing. White people have like 1 million, 6 million, and they get deals and they get such. And so remembering that there's a real world outside where you can touch grass and pick up a sign, you can rally, you can attend local organizations, you can just use your services that you have for small business, like you can do tangible things in the community that you're a part of. That's such a good reminder, because sometimes we get lost on the interwebs that Beyonce owns, and we stay up there for a really long time. So thank you so much for that reminder. You have shared so much today, and that Juneteenth one, I hope everybody heard that. Like, hold on to it. Thank you so much for all these gems. Are there any last minute sprinkles you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
No, I just want to thank you for I always think that, like, no matter how, we may feel about the platform, I think sometimes people may feel like my platform isn't growing or isn't doing what I think it is supposed to do. I'm so grateful you've created this space to have these conversations. I think this is so important. And I feel like I remember when you started it, or when I started seeing you talk about this on your LinkedIn, and I'm so happy to see how it's blossomed and how it's grown, and how you've used this as an outlet to just spread good into the world. So I think that I just want to say thank you for letting me onto your platform and sharing your platform with me. And I'm so grateful, and I can't wait to see the 100 more episodes that you create.
Okay. I promised y'all I would sit in these emotions. Thank you so much for the kind words. I'm not making a joke. Thank you so much for the kind words you have shared today. To everybody listening, keep setting those boundaries and say absolutely not to anything that is unaligned. We will see you next time. Bye.